there really wasn't a lot to see here if you were to listen to the pundits and the insiders in boxing, even if you were to just square these guys off and just do the eye test. Ruiz looked more of like the everyman. Joshua looked like the heavyweight champion of the world. It was just very clear, but Ruiz had a very deceptive record. He had 25 wins, only 1 loss. He was put into this fight. Eventually, the fight went off with Ruiz being a 9-1 favorite. At one point, though, he was almost 30-1 favorite. One of the most lopsided matches ever, which turns people off to boxing. They wonder why people don't love boxing the way that they used to, because they do crap like that all the time. How are you going to take the heavyweight champion of the world and throw him in a fight with a guy that nobody's ever seen because the guy's never been on television before? Oh, and by the way, the insiders within your own sport think this is a massacre. So I largely, and I will tell you, I did not call this. I did not see this. I didn't really know who Ruiz was. I don't follow Anthony Joshua all that close. I just know who he is, and I know he's the heavyweight champion. I know there's a heavyweight championship fight. I go watch it. And boy, it was anything but what was advertised. Now, Ruiz, this was not a Buster Douglas moment where he took some shots and just landed one big shot of his own with a surprised opponent. And I'll tell you this from competing. Any of you who've competed in any sport will know that I'm right. But anytime a match turns out to be harder than you thought the match was going to be, things can unravel very, very fast. You could go out there, you're playing baseball, and all of a sudden you're only up by 2 runs, a team that you thought you were going to run away with. When things like that happen and it starts to be more difficult than you thought it was going to be, whatever level that is, things can unravel really, really quick. And it looked like that's what happened with Joshua. He got in a couple of exchanges. He saw Ruiz's power, and he respected it. He started using a jab, even a really long jab. He was trying to keep his distance. Ruiz was a great counterpuncher. And he looked a little bit wild. Things were coming in, with big gaps left and right. It made it real easy for Joshua to cover up. But then sometimes Ruiz would surprise him. Boom, boom, right down the middle. Sometimes he'd send an uppercut right between those hands that were forming a guard for Joshua. It just made it hard, made him unpredictable. I could only imagine. I was watching on my TV going, hey, this guy's a little bit unpredictable. He can take a shot. He's here to compete. And he doesn't just go wild. Sometimes he'll surprise you up the middle. So where do you put your guard? Well, that's the problem. Joshua didn't know, which is why those shots kept getting through. And when Ruiz would throw one, he'd throw 3 more right behind it. Everything was punches and bunches. He had a good little feint to him. He had a good little movement, made Joshua guess a little bit. And then the fight started to get drawn on, and it started to get drug out. And that's where all the intangibles start to come in. Is the guy in shape? Does the guy want it? Can the guy dig deep? For either athlete, but that becomes the question. And Joshua, in many ways, was outboxing him. He was keeping his distance. He had pretty good footwork. He'd go to the body, come back upstairs, and then Ruiz would just throw a flurry. Boom, 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 boom. And then he'd get out, catch his breath. Now it's Joshua's turn again. It's back and forth. Every fight goes that same way. A guy comes in and unloads, but if the opponent's still standing, the guy has to stop. He has to stop to catch his breath. That's when it's the other guy's turn. Now he gets however many shots and then he's got to catch his breath. The other guy comes. I mean, this is the game. It's not overly complex, but as this fight starts to unfold, you can just see this is a harder night than what Joshua thought he was getting into. He also had a knockdown of Ruiz. There was 5 knockdowns in total. 1 went to Joshua. All the other 4 went to Ruiz. But one thing that happens when you knock the other guy down, if you don't think he's going to get up, we saw this between Wilder and Fury. If you don't think he's going to get up and you have that moment of celebration or of ease or of relief, of exhale, and the guy gets up, now you got problems. And I think that a little bit of that happened with Joshua. Ultimately, he just took too many big shots. Ultimately, he looked like he did not want to fight, and it looked like because he was exhausted. Now, when I tell you it looked like he did not want to fight, Chael, how can you say such a thing? Well, he was kicking his mouthpiece out on his own repeatedly, which is an old boxer's trick. You're supposed to get 10 seconds to a knockout, standing 8 count. That's an 8 count. That is a misconception that is going to be 8 seconds. An 8 count can take 13 seconds. Knockouts can go 14 seconds. They can go 7 seconds where it's a fast. It can go either way. It's just a count. So when he does this and he gets the count, he doesn't have his mouthpiece in for the 4th time, and the referee asked for it all 4 times, told him to put his hands up. And I'm talking about the stoppage because there was a number of people that thought, hey, that fight shouldn't have been stopped. I saw what you saw. I saw what you saw where Anthony Joshua met the bell. He also followed the referee's instructions. Physically, which was to put the hands up, but also verbally of, hey, step towards me. Do you want to continue? He did them all. Oh, by the way, where's your mouthpiece? Okay, you know what? We're done here. And the referee waves it off. And some of you go, how'd you stop that? I saw what you saw. I don't disagree with you. I will just remind you, I hope that you also saw that the only person in that building who wasn't questioning the referee's stoppage was Anthony Joshua. Sure, he threw up the hands and the body language and tipped his head to the side to express for the audience and try to tell the story of, oh my gosh, why did you stop? It wasn't real. He wasn't that good of an actor, and he couldn't have been any happier when that fight was stopped. And I think that there's a lesson here somewhere. Perhaps that lesson is real simple. It is okay to read what they say about you. It is never okay to believe it. I do not know the backstory of Anthony Joshua's training camp. It just struck me as a guy who believed he was close to a 30-1 favorite, who had to go in and do some light work against Ruiz Jr. to then draw in to potentially Wilder or Fury down the road. That's what it looked like to me. And I also think, one thing that's really true about boxing, whoever has the biggest name is the best boxer. It's been that way from day one. If you're known, if you're on TV, if they put the belt around you, if you get on more posters, you are then the best boxer. They never have really had a way outside of the Olympic Games of ever having a competitive architecture in place where the guys who believe they're the best can raise their hands, step into a bracketed tournament, and one guy's left standing, and then we all know for sure he's the best. It seems that it has always been a markability standpoint from the beginning of time. I grew up through the Mike Tyson era. Greatest boxer of all time, scariest guy in the world. Evander Holyfield told anybody who would listen, I can beat him right now. He's not the best. He wasn't the best last week, last year, or the next 5 years. Promoters are keeping us apart. If you give me one opportunity, I will prove to you he's not the best in the world, and he never was. By the way, Evander Holyfield is a year older than Mike Tyson. So this was not a matter of, okay, let Mike get out of his prime. According to Evander, give me him now. He's not the world's champion. He never should have been. And this is fake boxing BS, pulling the wool over the world's eyes. That's what Evander said. Not me talking. They went out and fought. Evander was telling the truth. They went and fought. Turned out Evander was telling the truth. What was happening? I guess Evander's the best in the world. Well, what was happening that whole time? There was a guy named Lennox Lewis, exact same age. So don't tell me one got out of his prime. Exact same age. Lennox Lewis is saying, neither one of these guys is the best. I'm the best. But boxing BS and their lack of architecture and their ability to sell and draw on the imaginations as opposed to the reality of the consumer, you, the fans, is keeping us apart. So they finally got them together, and it wasn't even competitive. Was not even competitive. Before anybody goes to correct me, I'm well aware it ended in a draw. I'm well aware. It was not competitive. That was one of the bigger screw jobs in boxing history. They rematched them, put in 3 new judges, wasn't competitive again, and that time went to Lennox Lewis. But the point is, we've never really known, as fight fans, who the best boxer is. We don't really know. And the boxers themselves who survive within that industry tend to mark out for their own gimmicks. I feel as though the athletes that are boxers and within that space are more than happy to go along with the imagination of the media, of which anoints and crowns who the best fighter in the world is. It seems if you were in the space and you could turn your head left and turn your head right and see what was going on and see the guys that are getting propelled and pushed to spots that were never meant to be there, If you turned your head left and right, it's like, oh boy, all the top boxers in the world all have the same record, 30-0. What a coincidence. How could they all be undefeated if you're actually competing with some of the best guys in the world? And you must be because you're the world champ. It would just seem that you would be able to realize I am in a BS industry, in a BS sport. And therefore, I'm going to take everybody really serious. Because the media doesn't actually know who's the best. The media doesn't know because they're not exposed to it, and they're not exposed to it because we don't have an architecture in place to expose them. So I need to prepare for everybody. And if I was the anointed one that got the belt put around my waist and they say I'm number one, oh, by the way, I beat another guy who they said was number one. Are you not smart enough to realize, yeah, he was said to be number one, and now you're said to be number one. It's all a bunch of garbage. But there's a place in sport for garbage. I'm a huge boxing fan. I watch all these matches. I don't really mind it in the least. I'm just aware that it happens. So when a guy like Mike Tyson gets upset by a Buster Douglas, or when a guy like Anthony Joshua gets upset by Ruiz Jr., or in many ways when Wilder finds out he's in a harder fight than he thought he was going to be in, standing there with Tyson Fury, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Should just come as a lesson that these matches are all really hard. The confines and the rules and the restraints of 12 rounds is ridiculously long. I had better go and prepare.